Nusma, council member for the 4th Ward. I will be chairing the meeting this evening. Let's do a quick roll call of committee members. Councilmember Wynn.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
And Councilmember Burns should be joining us fairly shortly. So let's move on with the next item of business, which is approval of the minutes from May 10th.
We do that, it's not requiring a vote.
The minutes do not need to be voted on. For the minutes.
Move approval.
Move the approval.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Roll call.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn.
Aye.
I will say aye as well, and we are acknowledging that as a virtual meeting, we are quorum compliant at this point. So let's move on. Actually, before we move into public comment, I would like to just do a quick recap of where we left off last time. Give me 1 second to share my screen here. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
There's Councilmember Burns in the room. So a quick recap from where we left off last time. Number one, we decided that yes, indeed, we do need to redistrict. We are intending to redistrict here. We are targeting the process to last through May of 2023 with a final council vote on the new map at that time. We discussed how to approach this and agreed via consensus that we are going to try and keep this simple without radically restructuring the map. We also agreed that public engagement is critical and that the primary channel for engaging the public will be via these committee meetings and public comment at these committee meetings. And we are not planning to propose any draft maps until after we receive public input. So in a very quick nutshell, that is much of what we discussed last time. And with that in mind, I will move on to public comment. And Ms. Payden, I'll put you first on the list, followed by Mr. Sutton, and then Ms. Esther.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you. I hope that more meetings are hybrid. I appreciate that as our COVID numbers are going up. And I hope that other meetings will be hybrid as well. So I apologize, I did not see the other meeting. And also this meeting was not on the, you had to go into the calendar to actually see the meeting, unlike some, most meetings that are up for today are on the home screen. So I would hope that future meetings would be on the home screen in order for people to know that there is a meeting right away. Also, it says you need to redistrict. I want to know, why do you need to redistrict, and what is the goal of this committee, and what do you plan on gaining from redistricting on the map? That's what I'd like to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Payden. We'll answer those questions before we proceed with the business after public comment. So, Mr. Sutton, you would like to weigh in?
Yes, I looked at the map and I'm encouraged to thank you for not making any final decisions until after there's been consideration and public concern. It seems like there will be an extension of the 2nd Ward, and I know through gentrification we've lost people here in the 5th Ward. So I want to be sure that we are equally having access to have the comparable population as the other wards in Evanston, and that will be my comments on that. See where these new boundaries will occur after discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Esther?
Council member, I think Miss Esther is having trouble getting into the meeting, so she may be joining, but maybe in a few minutes.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Well, let me reshare my screen then. And if Ms. Esther wants to weigh in, she can do that when she joins us. Tina, can you see the screen in front of us? I will assume you can, and just to
Yes,
quickly recap.
I can see it. It's small, but I can, I can get a gist of the wards, but it's a little small. Can you enlarge it any?
You can enlarge it by making it so.
Yeah, Tina, I will refer you, this map is also in the packet presentation from last month.
Maybe, okay, I understand. I can see how I can make it larger. I got it. I
Right.
got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Good. So
Okay, bye.
the reason we decided we need to redistrict is because the 9 wards of the city of Evanston have grown out of balance. On the large side, we have the 3rd ward, which is 11.7% greater than average. And on the small side, we have, percentage-wise, we have the 9th ward, which is 8.7% below average. So the total swing between the 3rd and 9th wards, the biggest and largest, is 20.4%. And according to federal guidelines, that number should ideally, it needs to be less than 16.4%, ideally less than 10%, and theoretically as close to 0 as possible. So what we're looking to do is balance the wards and get as close as we can to even population across all 9 wards. So that is very quickly why we have decided that we do need to redistrict. Although technically, according to state law, we don't, because the population of Evanston has changed. And we all acknowledge that according to the federal redistricting guidelines, it's certainly appropriate and something we intend to do. So moving on with the agenda for this evening, I would like to start a conversation about the criteria for redistricting. And I want to acknowledge that, going into this process, before we start to draw maps, we should have an idea of what the criteria are that we will be considering. And I also want to acknowledge that receiving public input on these criteria is also an important part of the process. So to start this conversation off, I'm presenting the criteria that we used in 2003. These were enumerated in Ordinance 103-0-03 20 years ago. And so these are the bullet points we see here. And I want to present these as a starting point for conversation. And maybe we could just kind of read through them one by one. And Councilor Cummings, if you want to weigh in here with your insight as well. And my intent here is not to present this as a final list, because over the coming months, we'll be doing more public engagement. And we'll have the opportunity to talk about these criteria as we move through the process. But I think maybe the first criteria we need to respect is the constitutional criteria at the federal level. This is the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. Councilor Cummings, if you want to opine on any of these, just jump in. Otherwise, I'll just keep reading through them. The Voting Rights Act is also important here. The Voting Rights Act gets into such concepts as racial demographics and ensuring adequate representation for minority groups. Compactness refers to districts being relatively compact, easy to draw a line around, and not super gerrymandered, as we are all aware has been done in many cases around the country over the years. Contiguity refers to the fact that all wards, an individual ward needs to be continuous with itself. You need to be able to get from all points of a ward without leaving that ward.
So just to your point, I don't wanna interrupt your flow too much, but if you look at the map that you have of previous, 7th Ward, 5th Ward, and 1st Ward, the points in which they intersect is technically not congruent.
Excuse me, it's hard to hear Attorney Cummings. Does he have a microphone
Sorry.
or something?
The areas where the 7th Ward, the 5th Ward, and the 1st Ward, 7th Ward is in purple on this map,
Uh-huh,
the 5th Ward is in a greenish color.
okay.
There's like a piece of the 7th Ward that's literally in the middle of the 5th and the 1st Ward.
Are you talking about this piece right here?
Yes.
Let's not be misled by this green, which is, the greenway, the forest, canal.
Yeah.
It's not,
Short channel,
yeah, it's
but
a channel.
There's a portion of that channel that extends,
Okay,
like, it's kind of difficult to see because it's really small, but
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
there's a portion that extends.
But the channel is not the ward.
Right, I understand that. Well,
Okay.
I get that. Okay, all right, fine.
the color scheme on this particular map is a little bit misleading.
Not good,
Yeah,
not
Yeah.
good. All right.
okay. But so contiguity means it has to be all contained, within itself. Natural geographic boundaries refers to, geography, like the channel, and the lakefront. We don't have any mountain ranges or, river valleys that we're dealing with here in Evanston. We do have a number of man-made geographic boundaries. Technically, I guess the channel may count as a man-made geographic boundary, but roads and highways, are essentially what we're talking about here.
And the railroad.
And the railroad, exactly. We also, at least in 2003, one of the criteria was minimization of voter confusion, which is an argument for, keeping the changes as incremental as possible and not throwing the map out and starting from a blank sheet of paper. So, in other words, kind of minimizing the number of voters that are changing wards. Communities of interest was another criteria for redistricting. The wording here, I think, is a little bit misleading because communities here doesn't refer to neighborhoods, but it refers to kind of populations of similar interest or interest groups, so to speak. So residential property owners, for example, municipal taxpayers across other wards, lakefront property owners, commercial business interests, student population. So as we continue our conversation here, we may want to enumerate some additional communities of interest, should the conversation go in that direction. Traditional Evanston neighborhoods were a consideration 20 years ago. That could be considered a community of interest for sure.
I almost called that.
Yeah, traditional Evanston neighborhoods also tend to, have some correspondence to geographic boundaries, whether natural or man-made.
Around the park.
Yeah, and, I will point out that protection of incumbency was, enumerated as a criteria in 2003.
So I just wanted to, point out for those that are in the meeting, and, for the committee, although I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's suggested that when you set your criteria, that there is an order of priority. And so this particular list, federal law is up top, state law is followed by a close second. For those that don't know, compactness and rurality, and the geographic boundaries are part of the state Illinois law when it comes to redistricting. And then the others are basically, based on principles or policy. So minimization of voter confusion, communities of interest, traditional Evanston neighborhoods, protection of incumbency, those are a matter of, principle or policy that you guys recommend, as a committee and as a community recommends for you guys to take to council for an adoption of a new map.
Thank you. And so, as I said, initially, we are not presenting this as a fait accompli, but presenting this list as a starting point for discussion. I will entertain a little bit of input from, council member, or from committee members tonight, if you want to weigh in here. Also, with the expectation that in future meetings, we will hear from members of the public and stakeholders are going to be welcome to join in on this as well. Yes. Councilmember Nguyen.
Well, I'll go ahead and weigh in a little bit. I really like this list, especially because of the order that it's in, as Council Cummings has saying. What's interesting is I don't remember the protection of incumbency being a big part of the discussion, from 20 years ago. You know, that's the one thing on the list that I think, doesn't feel like it really belongs there with the other values that we have there. You know, I recognize that in other instances, statewide and things like that, they sometimes include that. But I don't know that that's really something that we want to, you know, it's bottom of the list, and I would be fine if we removed it, you know.
So, to your point on that, Councilmember Nguyen, it's not really clear, obviously, how it's listed here, but for example, in the state of Michigan, when they set forth their principles and criteria, one of theirs was districts shall not favor or disfavor incumbents. So that could be what it is. It could be a prohibition, and not necessarily making sure that we are protecting, but it could be a prohibition against protection, but it's completely up to.
Can you say that again? Will not favor, or what you said?
Not favor or disfavor an incumbent. So that could be what we mean by protection.
That could be considered in the negative rather than the.
Correct. So this is more generally stated protection of incumbency, but what you guys can determine is that we don't care about incumbency.
Right.
But that's what that criteria could mean.
But we do care, and it shouldn't favor or disfavor. And what that means in the disfavor is, again, sometimes in redistricting, someone is drawn out of a ward that they represent intentionally, right? And that is something that could happen. You don't have to speak on it or say it publicly, but that could be your goal. So I think having that in there protects us, you know, just keeps our eye on the ball, that we should not be trying to target, you know, or favor incumbents. It should be.
And not that it's not important, it's just that we're trying to draw this map without any.
Right. Without political, considerations.
Exactly.
But I like that language quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that incumbency is going to be on our minds, and in the spirit of transparency, should therefore appear on the list, because it would be disingenuous to pretend we weren't thinking of that. Doesn't mean we're gonna act on that, but
I like the Michigan language because, it means we're thinking about it, but it means, it's far down on the list, and so to me, all of the other factors would take precedence over that. But I recognize also, Councilmember Burns, your concern that, that it just not be used as a weapon. Right. Yeah.
exactly. Councilmember Reed, if you'd like to weigh in, just feel free to jump in. I'm not necessarily tracking hand raising or anything like that.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm certainly one to jump in. But I just wanted to note one thing. I agree with all of the principles, and I want to note, I did some research. Last meeting, I stated that even if someone were to be drawn out of their ward, they'd still be able to run for 1 year preceding the remap, preceding the first election, whatever it is. They'd be able to run, and they'd have to move within the district within a year, and I confirm that that is correct in the statute. So just as even if we're drawing maps, someone who is not a, incumbent and, was drawn out of a particular ward will still be able to run in the next preceding election. So that's something to keep in mind.
As long as they
for residents,
move into
as long as they move, if they win, they have to move in. Yeah, within a year.
Okay, all right, okay.
Okay, good to know. So if there are no further comments on this point, I will move on. And so what I would like to do now is talk about our plans for outreach and engagement, and starting with the town halls. Last month, we had tentatively scheduled.
Could you go real quick back to the last slide?
Sure.
I see this as less of an issue, the way we're approaching this, but I don't know if this is state or federal, but no intentional racial discrimination. Again, you can't favor that shouldn't be a primary factor, is to create like race based areas, but there is something that talks about not discriminating against.
It's the
So
14th.
it's the 14th Amendment, Equal Protection Clause, and the Voting Rights Act are listed there. It's very generally stated, but to your point, and although race should not be a consideration, one of the things that the committee has to be careful of is actually shifting the racial balance of power. So right now, Evanston has 3 majority-minority wards. At the end of the drawing, they should not be, so significantly diluted as to have eliminated that majority-minority, significantly. I think right now, all of them are in the 60s, mid-60%, in terms of majority-minority.
Not the 8th ward. The 8th ward is, I think, closer, but.
The eighth ward is what, again?
I think the 8th ward is,
it?
I think the 8th ward has a slightly closer balance. I know we've seen some statistics presented here, but I do think the balance of the 8th ward is closer to 50% than a 60% minority majority.
You can check on
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
So I hear what you're saying. So yes, according to the 2000 census, 2010, 2020 census, the 8th ward is 64% minority.
Okay,
And the 5th ward is 68, and the 2nd ward is 60. So at the end of this process, I don't think that those numbers necessarily have to be like exactly the same, but you can't all of a sudden now have 40% minority representation in each of those 3 wards. You have to keep your majority-minority representation.
and by,
So it's not to dilute minority votes.
and by citing the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act, like, we are incorporating those principles.
Correct.
I think the same way as we provide some additional information under like communities of interest, we should probably add that to, I don't know where it would apply. Are you saying Voting Rights Act, Council Cummings?
So again, I'm just gonna reference Michigan as an example. Districts shall be of equal population as mandated by the United States Constitution and shall comply with the Voting Rights Act and other federal laws. So what that essentially would mean is that, as I just explained, like, you cannot assertively dilute, Black, Latino, Asian, Native American, you can't dilute their votes by shifting the population so much that now a ward that is 68% minority is now suddenly 40% minority.
I just think when that list, we show that list to the community, we should mention, you know, that we don't wanna,
Put some context behind it.
yeah, put some context behind it and call attention
hard
to
to come up with.
the harms of minority vote dilution, and that we cannot do that, and
Now,
however we wanna include it, but.
I will just say that the Supreme Court recently just sort of, let a map in Louisiana slide, like today,
Surprise,
that eliminated one of the minority districts, and the Supreme Court said it was completely fine. So, very much flies in the face of the Voting Rights Act, but as a city's attorney, I will tell you, like, it's not a good idea
Yeah,
to do that.
and it could be, again, this is a mix of our policy as well as, you know,
We could say,
Right.
I mean, we could say maintain majority, but I'm gonna say it wrong. Majority,
minority district.
wards, maintain 3 majority-minority wards.
Right. Do not reduce the number of majority-minority wards.
Thank you. That's it.
Well, not just reduce the number of wards, but
Maintain
to
them.
effectively change those wards
Yeah,
that are
that's
majority-minority.
So
right.
you can't recreate another majority-minority ward.
Right.
Because then you are shifting the franchise enough.
Right, so like, you can't all of a sudden make 6th ward majority-minority and take away that from the 5th ward. Even though you still have a majority-minority ward, now you violate your other principles of communities of interest, traditional evidence neighborhoods, et
Right.
cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So to take all of them together, but these are just listed in order of priority. So your federal law, state law, and then the principles that you guys adopted as a community.
And also, it's it's incrementalism,
Right.
you know, at its core.
And I do think by taking that light touch approach, we'll be able to respect all these
I was just about to
criteria
say that, yeah.
fairly
I
easily.
think it's just important that, for people to have confidence in the process and that they know it's something that we're paying attention to.
Yeah.
Exactly,
No, I
exactly.
No, Bobby, I completely agree. It should be in a parentheses, either
Right.
underneath the Constitution, right at the top, or the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
it's right there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All All right, so then looking ahead, we are planning 2 town halls, one in English, one in Spanish. We originally had said that, we penciled, in Saturday, July 16th for the Spanish town hall. I would like to change that to Wednesday, July 20th. And, City Clerk Stephanie Mendoza has volunteered to, present that one. And so this July 20th date meets her, fits in with her schedule. So I don't think we need to vote on that, but I'm just, calling everyone's attention to that we're making that change. So I'd like to take a few minutes now to kind of continue the discussion about what we want to put in that town hall. I think Councilmember Burns made some good points that we need to just maybe put a little bit of context behind those criteria. Maybe separate them out by federal, state, and local, and what they mean. I think it probably also makes sense to share the demographic map, so we can see how the populations have changed. So I see as, kind of the starting point for the presentation at the town hall is last month's presentation from the packet, with some additions and deletions to make it more suitable for a general town hall.
Will these be in person or virtual?
My understanding,
Yeah.
Sure.
at the last committee meeting, my understanding is that they would be virtual. We've been working with, staff to make sure that they can be virtual. But my understanding is that they plan to have virtual, be online for the community to participate. I'm trying to take notes to make sure we have your agenda correctly for the town hall. But at the same time, I think, the town hall might be an opportunity for you to get feedback from the community as well. You're gonna have other meetings, but
Exactly.
the town hall is an opportunity for you to get that feedback.
Exactly. So I want to talk about that. Yeah, I think we're planning virtual, to maximize the opportunity,
Okay, I get
for
that.
people to attend.
Can I, so I wanted to finish with my point is that, I mean, if we were back in the day when, or even before COVID, and we had a town hall, it would probably be in person. And having handouts so that people can study this, so having the ability to have people look at the materials on their own beforehand, or be able to take them away
Okay?
and study them later, because, as committee members, we know, all of these numbers you want to look at and look at
Yeah.
again and look at again. So having, understandable, well-explained, materials about, the current map and the what is required by law, and then our principles that we're following. And I'm trying to think of I know we can think of other materials to hand out, but, or to make sure that people have an opportunity to understand. And I think as much as possible, describing, what Nick has said about what are the principles that are that are required under the law in terms of incremental changes, and that we're committed to, making this as simple and as understandable as possible.
So do you envision all that relevant content going into a presentation that is made available beforehand? And then we run through the presentation.
Right.
During the town hall.
Right, and then, that's what I would recommend, so that people have a time beforehand, so that, because otherwise, everyone's sitting there studying their own
Yeah.
word and trying to, okay, what does that mean, and what does that mean? And I think your explanation about, Jonathan, is excellent, that the difference can't be more than 10%, and ideally as close to zero as possible. But also, I think last time you mentioned that, up to 2 to 3% is is viewed as good.
Under 10% is
Under 10%.
is the legal target.
Is a legal target, but if we can get it down, we may not be able to get it to zero, but that.
Yeah, zero is theoretical, optimum, but
So-
if you can get it down to 2, 3, 4, 5%,
Then
we're
we've
gonna
done a
be good.
really good job.
yeah.
I think that's an important point to make sure people understand, that getting it to zero is, as you said, theoretical. So,
Zero is really hard. You get somewhere around 5%. You should be able to be good for a good, Evanston, that's what happened in 2000.
right,
Evanston was actually somewhere around 8%, if I'm not mistaken. In 2010, you were at 16% deviation. The absolute least that the federal law will accept.
yeah,
So that's why there was no redrawing of the map in 2010, because after what happened in 2000, from my understanding, it was a lot of fun, and I mean that sarcastically. 2010, no one wanted to go through that, and it was at the
Right.
federal minimum, so left it alone. But now we're in a position where at 20%,
right,
because it wasn't redrawn, back then. So if you get to a place, you go from 20% to 5, you have some room
right,
for
okay,
people to move around
yeah.
in the.
So I'll volunteer to, prepare a draft of this presentation. I'll circulate it individually to committee members, and to staff for your input. And, we're not gonna meet again as a committee prior to the town hall, but in an OMA compliant manner, I'll get everyone's, approval of that presentation.
And the law department, I mean, we are staffing this committee, we are the staff assigned to this committee, so if you need resources from us, I have 2 interns on staff this summer. Alex is being induced tomorrow, so she's not gonna be around, but,
Oh my gosh, baby number 2 already?
Okay,
yeah, but the rest of us are, if you need something from us,
okay,
let us know,
okay.
including that sort of administrative
Yeah, great.
stuff.
So,
I have 2 quick comments.
Sure.
So we've held a few, like townhomes around the police chief hire and
Mhm.
some other townhomes that haven't been as attended as
Mhm.
some of our previous events. And so I think the new way to market events, as common as it was at one point to put things in the newsletter, is to do digital ads.
mhm.
And I know we do some of this as a city around new positions, I think. But if we can reach out to Luke Stowe or whoever would be over that, just to see if we can do some digital targeted ads out in the community, especially because it's a remote meeting. We can provide the link on the digital ad, just to make sure that we're really pushing this out, across the city. So that's one thing to look into. And I brought this up in the last meeting, is that I really think, that we should expand, our language access and include other common languages spoken at home in Evanston. I'm still waiting to get some information back from the district, but, I think one way to do that is to, allow for more translation during the English session. We could look into creating landing pages in different common languages. I mean, there's a few ways to approach this, but I think we should, at one of these townhomes or town halls, we should try to expand beyond, English and Spanish.
What other languages are you thinking about, Bobby?
I brought up, I brought up French I brought up French because there's a lot of African nations that
Yeah.
speak French, as well as.
And Haitian.
Exactly. So I think that's a good one to
Yeah,
start with.
yeah.
And we put some fillers out in the community as well to see if there's any other languages
If there's
that make
another-
sense. But I think that one is a good
Yeah,
addition.
I agree.
Yeah. You got a Haitian in the house? Oh, okay. So that's all.
All right, let's keep that in mind. And Bobby, you're talking about my 4th bullet point there, promotion, digital ads.
Yeah.
Like, how else do we want to promote this?
So to Councilmember Burns' point, I will send a message to the city manager's office tomorrow and get Pat Dignan, involved in making sure we start publicizing these.
Mhm.
But also need to make sure that, we have the link for
Yeah.
for them as well. We don't wanna publicize and we don't have to Zoom.
Right, so that was working backwards on my list, the IT management,
Yes.
is not something that I'm capable of doing myself,
No, we
so
will have to have staff.
have to rely on staff to do that.
And we have press here.
Yeah,
And, and Bill,
the members of the Fourth Estate have a role to play here
Yeah.
too, so.
right. And then I do think frankly, I think this should be mentioned at every single council meeting beforehand. We only have actually one.
There's only one more, yeah.
One more beforehand, is that right? Or two?
Well, yes, two before.
We have two before, and I think it actually should be a mayor's special announcement about it. Not just from you, but from,
Yeah.
you know, it should be the mayor's special, or from the clerk. So, Clerk Mendoza, might wanna make the announcement, or the mayor might wanna make the
Yeah.
announcement.
That's a good idea.
And then
But if-
plaster
yeah, if-
it all over our, the city webpage.
Yeah, if our communications department can do a press release, that's something that we could put in our ward newsletters.
Yeah,
I'll be having a ward meeting before the town hall, so I'll promote it at my ward meeting. You guys, have some ward meetings coming up.
I have one after, but my ward newsletter will go out beforehand, so.
And I just wanna make sure, again, to communicate the digital ads to Patrick, because what I'm really trying to achieve is getting out of that bubble. Like, there's people that,
Never
it's
saw-
easy to reach the people who have signed up for our newsletters, who attend every town hall, who attend the ward meetings, and that's great, we can get to them, or who, read the round table, but how do we get out of that bubble? I think digital ads are a great way to do that, because we can literally target people who are, we can target people differently than we
I
can.
will suggest that the people who are most inclined to get into a wonky policy discussion like redistricting are probably already signed up for
For sure.
newsletters, but,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, we need to get out of the bubble.
I mean, is this is really old fashioned, but is this worth putting, some kind of paper flyer in our rec centers or in the library, or posting something like that? I don't know whether that gets us any traction anymore, but there are people who are not digital,
Yeah, but the press release can be printed in
Although-
that format with the
although,
QR code or something,
you
so.
know, we're doing this virtually,
Yeah.
so it does, provide there is a digital divide that you have to leap across there.
So if we could request that staff follows up with the communications department on all of these concepts, and we'll make sure it gets as widely promoted as a redistricting town hall ever has been.
And the mayor has a town hall coming up.
City manager,
Well, no, the mayor has one with
The round table.
the editor and the roundtable.
right, talking about the city manager process.
Yes. But he could mention it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's good practice also, I mean, it's great for this, but also we have PB coming up and other things.
Exactly.
So this is good,
Yeah.
good practice.
So then working our way, backwards up the list, online survey and feedback, we are going to have folks participate in the town hall. I would like ideally to have some kind of structured format to receive feedback. Open to suggestions on what that might look like. On the simplest side, people could just type type their comments into a chat. We save that chat. But do we also want to post a link to, an online survey or some feedback form?
So typically, in what has actually proven to be, good for us to this point is a Google form or SurveyMonkey. It's free to use, but the Google form actually goes directly into a collectible sheet,
Mm-hmm.
for city staff to have it. It's automatic, so as soon as someone hits submit, that information is dumped into like an Excel spreadsheet, for us to be able to share that information with you. The issue is trying to figure out, and we can certainly meet offline, to discuss what should be in that survey, so we can build it for you and then out through whatever communication means, for the, again, it's still a digital divide,
Yeah.
but to send it out, to get as much
Yeah,
feedback as we
it's gonna
can.
happen.
Yeah.
And we'll probably even rope in the sheet, because, she had a lot of experience doing that with preparation.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, great. Maybe this is a good project for the interns to come up with a first draft of the
Yeah.
survey.
I love that idea. I mean, they could go and look at other communities, and see what, maybe some of the other surveys that were used in smaller communities, not necessarily Chicago. I don't think we wanna, I think if anything, we wanna say, we are not Chicago on this.
Yeah.
Their process for redistricting is completely different, and it's codified in state law.
And then did they even follow it?
Yes, they did, unfortunately.
Another cool thing I experienced, and we could have, I think, a survey that captures all the questions for those who don't attend, but I think one thing we could do, is at the meeting itself, at different periods throughout the event, put out a link with certain questions based around that section that we're discussing. So we can get like instant feedback on specific things that they're learning about right now, so it's fresh in their mind, and it's also limits the amount of questions, so it's more likely they'll do it. And it could be like 2 or 3 questions per section, for example. Now that you've learned about, I don't know, minority vote dilution or community dimensions or whatever it is, quickly answer these 3 questions, and then we'll kind of move forward to the next section. So we get instant feedback, it's fresh on their mind, and we did this at the district through the student reassignment committee. And I can figure out from a technology standpoint how they did that, and what they used, and share that with Patrick.
I would love to have somebody figure out that technology, and then we
It
don't.
was as simple as a link. It was just like, if you drop the
Yeah.
new chat in the link, they click that, and it's bam, the survey's right there, 3 quick questions, very user-friendly, and you don't get so overwhelmed with a 30 at the end of the meeting, and when you've already covered this new information, but it's like, right in that moment, you just learned about this, answer 2
Yeah.
quick questions, and then we'll move on.
So let's keep that in mind as we're
Yeah.
circulating the draft of the presentation, and if there's an opportunity that you see that would make sense to drop in a few questions,
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I like people who thought through things, you know, a little bit, rather than, "Ooh, here's my reaction, ooh, here's my reaction,"
Yeah.
you know.
So the questions would have to be appropriate and fit
Yeah.
the topic. But, yeah, I like that. I
So
like that
maybe a
idea.
blend of both.
Let's also keep in mind that, like, we're gonna be doing this once, and, you know, we wanna keep it fairly simple and straightforward, because it also has to be then translated into Spanish, for Clerk Mendoza to deliver
Within a week.
So, we're not
We'll keep it
designing the
on.
Taj Mahal here.
Although the survey might be easier, because I think Google has like an automatic translate option.
Yeah.
So the survey itself, we might be able to easily translate, no problem, but presentation and all this, like the whole machination and working out might be a little more problematic to do.
Okay. All right, I would like to move on unless there's
No,
anything
that's
else
all
to
we're-
talk
No, we're
about for
good.
this town hall planning. To talk about
I'm sorry,
stakeholder,
have we determined the location yet?
online,
Oh, sorry, remote, okay.
yeah,
Good.
online, sure. So beyond or after the town halls, we're going to be having monthly committee meetings over the next several months. And, we desire to use these committee meetings as the avenue to accept public input. And so I'd like to be proactive on this and intentionally reach out to stakeholder groups and individuals and make sure that they are aware of this opportunity. And in anticipation, an optimistic anticipation of, you know, dozens of groups that want to weigh in here, what I'm kind of envisioning is a scheduled process that is run through the legal staff, that they can make sure we are spreading the public comment out over the next 5 meetings, that we're not front-loading everybody into July, for example.
You know, Bobby, I'm sorry, as Councilmember Fern, you've got a natural, setup with your block group. that provides sort of natural, I mean, I'm just trying to think of, like, in my ward, there are blocks, but they're not well organized, and I'm thinking, okay, what are ways in which you could get feedback from, groups, affinity groups, essentially? And I was thinking about the, block clubs that you were mentioning the other day. I'm gonna have to find the virtual block groups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
condo associations.
Yeah, I'm sharing, relevant to this point,
Yeah,
committee members, I'm sharing a list that I culled from our city manager search process
Ooh,
of stakeholders.
what a good idea.
And so what I will
John,
suggest,
John, sorry to interrupt, but you have email addresses and stuff here. Do you want to delete or close out that part of the screen?
there we go, how's that?
There we go. Yeah.
That was my intent. Okay, so we have this list. I'm not presenting this as our plan at this point. So what I would suggest is I will share this list with committee members.
So this might be fine for stakeholder groups. I would just only make suggestions, not completely legal advice. Stakeholder groups, for the city manager search, much more different group of people than when you're talking about board boundaries and you're talking about voting.
Right.
So one of the suggestions I talked to you before this meeting was maybe like, as we have these months of meetings, each meeting is like a ward.
Yeah.
Comes and talks, like, we
Yeah.
invite the first ward one meeting, we invite the second ward one meeting.
Yeah, I like that.
And in those, like, after the town hall, and then after those meetings, or at those meetings, you have a discussion more so about your criteria that are unique to what,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
you guys are trying to establish.
Mhm.
And you get direct feedback from each ward, because you might, understanding that the reality of the situation is those who are on the boundaries are the ones likely to get you most effective.
mm-hmm.
So the boundaries of the second and the fifth, somebody might go from being the second to the fifth, they might have feelings about that, you kind of want them to be able to bring that through here. It's not gonna be the folks that are smack dab in the middle of the ward that are gonna get impacted,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
If-
but
So-
if I may-
really like that idea. That kind of gets to my point about the block club, because you really want the affinity group of people who see each other, like today, see each other at their precinct. When, I mean, I ran into my neighbors at my precinct voting today.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, sorry.
If I may,
Yeah,
oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. If I may jump in, I agree. Thank you, Nick. I think that is a very good idea. I'm wondering if we need to think about and send forward to council a budget for this, because we discussed that in the participatory budgeting committee. But I think the city needs to set aside. We need to think about how much money will it take to really conduct the kind of outreach that we need to conduct to do this right. And I think that should be one of the next things. And forgive me if I'm jumping ahead or out of line in some way, but I think that's one of the things that we need to really focus on. And as Nick, I think, just mentioned, which I think was a really good point, that it's really the folks on the boundaries of wards that are most likely to be shifted into one ward or another. Should we maybe specifically mail those folks and to invite them to these meetings to say, hey, look, you're on the border, so you might be someone who's likely to be changed. You really might be interested in this, and other things. So I think we should just start thinking about budgeting.
Yeah, I think a direct canvas or a mailer, would be appropriate.
Postcard or something.
Yeah.
that's a good point. It's, I mean, so far, the only thing we've talked about that would cost additional money is the promotion.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly, and the digital ads.
Yeah.
Would cost
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
And if we want to do some promotion by flyers, that's, we could talk about that, or mailers. But Council Cummings, after our conversation this afternoon, I was thinking along the same lines. And since we have given ourselves 5 months to do this public engagement process, I was thinking that we could do 2 wards a month.
Right.
And target we could just take them in order, I suppose.
Well, it might actually be good to do the ones that are adjacent that might have the shift going back and forth, like first and third. Where, you know, as we discussed the last time, first is under, third is over.
Yeah,
And, you know, those edges there could, you know, are the most.
do you wanna
likely-
strategize about that a little bit right now?
I mean, 'cause that, I think to know what areas we need to target for direct outreach, like postcarding, I think we have to know what areas might be in play. And I don't know if we wanna do that amongst this committee or
Well,
with some community feedback first, but.
I don't think, it's the nature of this process that we can't get too targeted in our outreach because we don't know what we don't know where the new boundaries are gonna be.
Well, so,
I mean, yes
the
and no.
first and second don't, excuse me, they do touch, all right, I take it back. So, okay, then you could do it in order, first and second, third and fourth.
Yeah, I think in
However,
order or communities that are alike, you know,
Yeah.
that have some other
Right.
affinity, I think
So,
either one of those
9,
works.
or- I mean, 8 and 9, I mean, if you did 5 and 6, they don't touch.
And the reason I
You know,
say,
and
Yeah.
7 and 8, you know, don't touch.
I've never really understood how these numbers got.
I don't know,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Some of these are gonna be fairly simple conversations. The third ward is gonna be kind of a simple conversation, I anticipate,
Yeah.
right? And the
I
sixth
will
ward,
go
you know,
door to door and hand them all off,
Yeah.
wherever they go,
yeah.
yeah.
Where it's gonna get more complicated is with the fifth ward and the second ward.
not even complicated as much as we know the area.
Yeah,
That makes the most
I venture to
sense.
say that there's likely gonna be parts of the second and parts of the seventh that are gonna become part of the fifth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's target those areas and make sure that they're represented, among those groups that come in and speak. Because that's clearly,
And
if,
parts of the second, they're gonna
that's
become
clearly
part of
what
the
we're
ninth.
gonna have to do.
And 2, 9, and 8 are also likely gonna blend in.
Although 8 is pretty good, though.
Yeah, but in order to get it to be even, gonna have to be some folks
some
from 8
blocks
going to
move.
9.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
given the wards that are near the 8th ward, it looks like the 8th is gonna shift in some way, you know, be a little different, in order to
Yeah.
compensate for 5 and, I'm sorry, for 9
yeah.
Yeah,
and 4.
But you can, and you don't have to make the decision tonight, you don't have to make a decision tonight, but the suggestion is that you do gather wards, but however you decide to group them together is completely up to you, but, you know, understanding that it will be the people on the boundaries that
Yeah,
are likely to be most.
so I think we're in agreement that we would wanna do 2 wards per
yeah,
meeting,
I like that,
Yes.
yeah.
right? And we'll strategically select those wards, let's not do that right now, but offline fairly quickly so that we can publicize that,
Yeah.
with the material that will be released. And,
Again, with direct outreach to people along the boundaries, because I don't wanna lose what Council Cummings said, and that, we just know where we're going with, especially if you consider compactness, like we're trying to be low touch, don't wanna change much. You know, the 8th ward, we're talking about this, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we know what we're talking about. We're
Yeah.
talking about maybe pushing Oakton being the, you know, instead of Oakton being a line of these areas, kind of pushing
Right.
that further south. So we
Right.
know where we're going, so let's just make sure we do some direct outreach, you know, for the residents around the boundaries, especially to make sure that they're among the group. And we don't get a whole bunch of people that are in the center that probably gonna be, I mean, we still wanna hear from them, but
Right.
to your point, we
No,
really
good.
need to hear from the people.
I agree with
on
that,
the
Bob,
boundaries.
yeah.
if we wanna make a budget request, I mean, we're a committee, we can make that request to council. We would like to do that sooner rather than later, so shall we come up with a number now that we agree on? And take a
I think
vote?
we should put a little bit of, I mean, I think we should put some thought into what it would take to conduct the outreach in a community of our size. I would imagine the budget would not be as, of course, as intensive as PB, but would mirror how much we're spending for the advertising portion of PB. And so we may be looking at, you know, something, I think their recommendation was $1.25 per resident. And I think we might be looking at, you know, a similar figure. It should be about $100,000.
That's just allowing the vote.
Well,
Yeah,
wait,
I was gonna suggest 50, but 100 is fine, though.
$100,000 for this?
I
I
think
don't
to
think so.
mail every resident and let them know, hey, this is a process we want you engaged in. Digital advertising, as I heard folks mention. Yeah, I think to do it right and not to have like, kind of non-engaging materials. I think, yeah, to outreach to engage with the entire city. I think Nick is right. I think 60 to 100,000, and $70 to $100,000 is about right.
I wanna see the research
Yeah.
behind that. That number sounds,
Well, if we're gonna mail every resident, that's different. I didn't know that was our goal, but if it is,
yeah,
yeah.
direct mail to
that can
every
get up
single
there.
resident,
yeah, I think there are so many things that we want the community to engage on, redistricting being just one of them.
So if you want targeting, our GIS group can get us addresses, in certain areas, that's what you actually want. So we can have targeted mailers to specific houses along the boundaries or wherever the community.
We can draw it.
yeah,
We can ask the GIS group to say, hey, this is actually one of our cases, give me the number of houses within 500 feet of
yeah.
X, and they can give you all the addresses that
We
are.
do that for zoning already, the notice for zoning.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
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 So if that's what the council wants to do, that'll help reduce the number,
Right,
because I don't doubt Councilmember Reed, if you want to send it to every single resident, but if you want to have it targeted and not go to every single resident, we can narrow it similar to what we do for zoning case, the land use commission does.
right. That makes much more sense.
Still do digital ads and everything else and posters to try to reach everybody, but typically the mailers, because that's the priciest, outreach, other than direct, canvassing.
So to make it official, shall we just say $50,000 is our budget request? If we want to put something in front of council, at our next meeting.
Probably should just get some costs first,
Yeah,
based on,
I'd rather do that. I mean, I
based
think
on whatever
50,000
our
sounds-
strategy is gonna be.
Yeah.
And maybe we do it for all of Evanston and then maybe some targeted areas, we get costs on both.
I'm thinking from my last
Excuse me,
campaign, how much.
Can you,
Yeah.
hello? Can you take a
Yeah, Ms.
suggestion?
Payton,
Yeah, I have a few, this is kind of disturbing because you're discussing a town hall on July 13th. So you know that's 2 weeks from tomorrow. And realize that we have a holiday this weekend. So you're discussing mail that is already poorly distributed throughout the city. And 2 weeks is insufficient because I don't even get my mail half the time. And so if you're
The
planning on,
mailing isn't about just that one event. The mailing's about the
Yeah.
overall.
right, I know
Tina,
what
what
you're
we're,
saying, but
yeah,
if your goal is to get people at the meeting, that's what you're discussing now. I'm saying that it's very close. It's only 2 weeks away and you have a holiday and there's lots of people that are on vacation as well. And a lot of seniors or people that are not on the computer, um, need sufficient notice. And I'm only suggesting, council member, that this is very close because it's only 2 weeks away and you have a holiday this weekend and
yeah, Ms. Payton,
mailing
if I could
something.
interrupt, if I could interrupt, what we're talking about now with these mailers is engaging folks over the next 5 months at committee meetings, July through November.
Okay.
So we're
And-
not
and
talking about
also-
mailers for
I also had one,
the,
can I say this other thing? That I hope that your meeting or the town hall will be in city council chambers, because I can hardly hear half of what you're saying because nobody's mic'd up. So I hope that you're going to be in council chambers so everyone can hear. Now, will the town hall be online as well in person? People can come, or what is happening
the
with that?
town hall will be only virtual.
Okay, well, I really hope,
Only,
I really hope that you have it in council chambers, because I can't hear half of the things that anybody else is saying. It's very difficult, and this way people can hear you clearly. So
I,
I got it. The
if
town
I can
hall will
just,
be only virtual. We will all be behind our own computers in our own houses.
Oh,
So
okay, well,
audio
all
will
right.
not be a problem there, but thank you. I'd like to keep moving on here, and wrap this up within the next 20 minutes if we could. I will share this list of stakeholder groups, because that's one channel I think is really important to let people know what's going on, and, we'll make sure that those groups are informed of this process. Let's work offline to develop a budget for targeted mailers as well as the digital ads. And then that's something, if we cannot talk about it offline prior to our next committee meeting, for sure, at the latest, we'll talk about it at our next committee meeting. And then as soon as possible, go to council for approval of that budget. And so in terms of managing the logistics of this schedule, Council Cummings, somebody in your department will be the contact person that can run the calendar and make sure that folks are signing up.
Yes, so Lolita and Keena
Okay,
are the staff people, person, that will manage sort of your agenda, manage your agenda, make sure it's on the calendar. We're working with, the IT staff, make sure we have all your links. If you have information that you want included in the packet, to put on the website, those are your contact people. And obviously you can CC me so I can, in case one of them is unavailable or something.
Lolita and Keena.
Lolita and Keena.
Got it.
And I said this earlier, but Council Cummings, if you can, look up translation services, to provide the town hall in French during the English session, to have like a separate room or however we typically do it, just to get costs, whether we do it or not, but it would be nice to get costs for that.
Okay, great. So offline, we will also figure out which wards to focus on at which of the next 5 meetings. Targeting to a meeting, or leaving us with some extra time on one of these months. So, any other thoughts on that planning for the outreach over the next 5 months? And again, for those of you online, what we're targeting is wrapping up this public engagement process by November. And then in December, the committee will draft several maps based on the input we've received, and we will release those maps early next year. We're targeting January. We'll get some public comment feedback on those maps February and April, and then we're targeting at our May meeting of this committee, we will recommend a map for council consideration that City Council would then approve at one of the May council meetings. So that is what our schedule looks like as we look ahead. Future meetings, at least through November, we've scheduled meetings on the 4th Tuesday of every month. So that's a matter of public record at this point. And that is all I have on the presentation here.
Council Cummings, if it wouldn't be too difficult to send out a Google invitation for this meeting, if we haven't already, someone in your office potentially, helps me keep track of it all. We have a lot of meetings. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other business to bring before the committee?
No.
Anybody online wishing to make one last public comment, or Councilmember Reed?
no, I was just gonna say no, I have nothing, so.
Okay, great. There being no further business to come before the committee, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.